So me and my business partner, we owned a nightclub in downtown Syracuse, Army Square. One of the first and only minority owned. It was a partnership between us and a restaurant who he was a minority owner as well. And it was the shooting that happened on Thanksgiving a couple years ago. The people came out of a different bar, a white-owned establishment. The shooting happened. The cops automatically assumed that they came from our establishment, came and made us shut down for the night, and told us that your people did this. Shut us down, cleared us out. We lost thousands upon thousands of dollars. Our business struggled to recover from it, and then they found out that it actually came from a white-owned establishment, but they assumed that it was us.
So let's get to what started the movement. Names like Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, and now George Floyd represent just a fraction of Black people killed by police. There's been so many more than those that I mentioned. So why did George Floyd's death under the knee of Minneapolis officer Derek Chauvin ignite the Black Lives Matter supporters?
Well, I'll go first on that. I think that it's just something that could be seen, and something that there's some things that, words can't say, our stories don't tell you, but pictures and sound do. And when you can actually take a look at something like that and you see something that horrific, that's going to spark change. And it should move you emotionally.
People who've been at the hands of police brutality or died at the hands of police, some type of police brutality, is that accountability has been the issue, the root of the issue. It's always justified why these things are happening and continue to happen. And I think, like Sam said, it's right there in your face, time and time again. Every time something happens like this, people are like, well, maybe, if she would have did this, or if he would have did that, or, and then the next one is like, okay, well, they did that, but if they didn't do this, or if she would have did that, and so now you see someone on camera, 8 minutes and 49 seconds, screaming, I can't breathe. And then the cry for their mom, everyone has a mother. Everyone has a mother that they love. Just that, I think really hit home to people like, wait a minute, this is a human being. This is not just, a black person who's dying. This is someone who's human. This is someone that I can connect with now. And, I think the problem that we're seeing is that far too long, there was no accountability for that. And now people are ready to hold those accountable.
I also think that it's important to note this wasn't the first domino to fall. Black people in America for 3 months straight saw first Ahmaud Arbery was shot on a jog February 23rd. Then Breonna Taylor was shot in her home on March 13th. And then came George Floyd on May 25th, who we saw on camera, again, as you were saying, Quindell. And so this wasn't the first instance. This was kind of the last shoe to drop. And then in the midst of that, we also then had Tony McDade, a Black trans man who was killed by police in Tallahassee. And then we just got louder because we were like, are you like in the middle of this? We were already protesting this. And then that surfaces. So then it's like, So then I think that, this is George Floyd on the why now question. He was just the tip of the iceberg. That's not everything that led up to it. And that's a big thing that people haven't been understanding, is that this isn't a one-off. This isn't one thing that happened that's eliciting this response. It is years and years and years of things exactly like this, again, to your point, that there's been no accountability for.
And what you see is a lot of people who are responding to, the rioting and the looting, they're like, oh, that's wrong. Violence is never the answer. I understand, one person has died, and it goes beyond that. It even goes beyond the death of unarmed Black people at the hands of police. It's a systemic, structure that at the root needs to be dismantled. So yes, I think we all can agree that looting and rioting and violence is not the answer, but we've tried to protest silently. We tried the peaceful, we tried kneeling, and again, we're going back to, hijacking the narrative. When Kaepernick kneeled, he specifically said, police brutality, People are dying. We need to focus on this. And that narrative was hijacked to, oh, the military, you're disrespecting the military, you're disrespecting the flag. And then now people are comfortable with saying, oh, let's discount that movement again. And so now you see violence and looting, and the country is literally burning down. And now we're like, okay, wait a minute, let's go back to kneeling, and it's like, what are we doing? We tried that. And so, yes, violence is not the answer, but if that was what took for you to really open your eyes to what the issue is here, then by all means, so be it.
I think you make a great point too. It's very much so the concept of now isn't the time or place for that kind of protesting, because again, they hijacked that narrative. And so it was like, protesting is never going to have a right time or place. That is a whole point of a protest. And so that is something that gets lost kind of in the communication as well. If you enjoyed it and you liked seeing it, it wouldn't be a protest. So, and this isn't the first case of things like that. So I think it's a very good point. And most people that I know do not condone the violence, but most people I know also sympathize with it. And they're like, yeah, no one listened until that was happening. And I spoke about this a little bit online. A lot of people like to invoke Martin Luther King in that narrative. And I'm like, I get it, but also you don't get it, because you forget all the people, the Black Panthers, the Malcolm X's, who were behind him, ready to get real if no one wanted to listen. And then you also forget that what was his peaceful activism met with? He was shot in the head. So you want to talk about violence, that's a very complicated and difficult conversation. And if you want to talk about it, that's okay, but you need to bring all the facts to the table. You can't conveniently leave all of that out. And in a great roundtable that I watched, it was on Obama.org, and one of the city council people for Minneapolis came on and was speaking about the looting and rioting going on. There was, specifically speaking, white supremacist groups that were coming into predominantly Black neighborhoods, Black-owned businesses, and looting and rioting those places. And then they would use this propaganda and use these phrases that the Black Lives Matter movement had coined, and that's what was spray painted. So then it's like a whole, it's very complicated, it's very difficult, because the hijacking is coming from white supremacist groups as well. And so you're seeing this looting and rioting and saying this, oh, these protesting are wrong. More often than not, it's not the protesters, it's people who are, again, hijacking that narrative and turning it into being this use of propaganda to discredit an entire movement that has largely, and for the most part, been peaceful.
I'm not sure if this happened in other cities, but I know at least in Nashville, there were Craigslist ads for actors wanted at our protest. We had a 10,000 person march on Thursday of last week, organized by 4 14-year-old girls, which alone was incredible to watch. And we had a curfew, and we had National Guard here. We had everything happen. Our courthouse was set on fire. All of our, like, the main thing that happens in Nashville is tourism. Our biggest street was rioted, looted. All the glass windows were broken. But all of the protesters went home at 5. They all left. That was the direction. And there were videos shown. I've seen this in countless cities across the nation, but there were videos shown of people showing up after the protests, of police dropping bricks and other things and random pallets. Like, there's no reason for a pallet of bricks to be sitting in the middle of downtown Nashville, or any city for that matter. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And that's something that people need to take into consideration, because even my parents, even my Black father is condemning these people. And I'm like, Dad, you realize these are not the people that are doing it. It's not the point of the protest. We know what we need. We know what we want. There's no reason to just go around throwing bricks at windows. Like, yeah, there are people down there doing it, and they're doing it for the wrong reason. They might be doing it for attention, but there's a Craigslist ad out there looking for actors, riot actors, and screenshots were taken. People shared the link. It was taken down, but like, people are getting paid to go do that. And that's just something that I can't wrap my head around, but I know that that's happening everywhere. But a white man set our courthouse on fire in Nashville, and he had a Black friend that was standing near him. And the biggest narrative right now in Nashville is that there's 2 separate news articles in our local newspaper. One of them is labeled the man's name, arrested, and it's a picture of him being held by a SWAT team member as if they posed for a photo. And then the other article is local thug sets courthouse on fire, and it's the Black man with 2 SWAT team members with his hands behind his back, and he's laughing in the photo because he knows what that narrative is. And it blew me away because I don't think those two men, I don't actually think they knew each other. They were just both related to that. But it was the white man that was convicted of setting the courthouse on fire, and yet he got the nicer article and he got the photo op. And it's real time.
I think what's most frustrating, all of us who study media, is just like, we know the power of media, and we know when we see these things that, again, hijacking that narrative. And, we speak about the opportunists who came in and, found that they wanted to loot. Those who looted, those who incited violence were hell-bent on doing that regardless of what was going on. Those who protested were protesting. Those who looted were looters. Those who incited riots were rioters. But what you see is, again, narrative. We're talking about police right now, and people always like to say, well, not all police are bad, that one policeman. But then on the flip, they'll say, well, all the protesters were looting and rioting. That's not the answer. So we can't have it both ways. And, you can't say one thing and then you condemn the rioters and looters. Yes, absolutely. Again, we all agree, not what we want. We do not condone that. But those opportunists who took the time to do that was, either hired through Craigslist, like you said, or, just there for that opportunity to do that, to switch that narrative. Mm-hmm. And, then the papers and the media or the TV, and I hate to say the media, but, we all studied it. So we know why we got into media. And that was one of the things the reason why I got into media, because I would see these things that just, if you look a little deeper, just didn't make sense from what the headline read. But yeah, crazy stuff.
Show me what democracy looks.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy